What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Base Hit Ball 4. Glendon Eagers, Tyler Blumenstick, and Scott Roswald here. 1 week down in the MLB season, there is no shortage of topics and areas of discussion to get to. The Yankees already have problems. The Mets have had some problems, especially with DeGrom. Arenado hit a big home run in his St. Louis home debut. And yeah, there's just a ton of things happening. Oakland's stumbling out of the gate, the Astros hot out of the gate. A lot of things to talk about, but we will start with the Mets and the ending of the game that happened a few hours ago. So the Marlins were heading into the ninth inning, up 2-1, trying to spoil the Mets home opener, Francisco Lindor's Citi Field debut. And McNeil leads off the ninth. I believe he led off the ninth with an absolute bomb into the right field Pepsi porch, Coca-Cola corner, whatever they call it now. It's one of those beverages. So the game's tied. And then fast forward a little bit through the end of the ninth inning, the bases are now loaded, 1 out, Michael Conforto at the plate. Now, Scott knows this better than anyone because the Mets just played a series with the Phillies. Conforto, it does not look good so far this season. He's struggled. He's struggled with men on base. He's in a contract year trying to get that big dollar figure that, his potential would lead him to get. So with a 1-2 count, the pitch was a strike. It hit the pitch cast. It hit the strike zone. It's a strike. The umpire started to cock back to do that, good old fashioned punch out, but Conforto very clearly leans in to the strike zone. His elbow guard gets clipped, and the umpire changes his mind mid-call and says, "You're going to go to first. The game's over. The bases loaded. The run scores. Mets win." Don Mattingly, the manager of the Miami Marlins, flips out, and the Marlins are just going crazy. Unfortunately, this is not a reviewable play, and the home plate umpire got asked after the game by a slew of reporters basically saying, "Yeah, I fucked up." So a couple ways to kind of talk about this. One, if Cash was here, he'd freak out because he freaks out over, what the Brewers did in the playoffs. He freaks out about the Astros. This is on that same level of kind of bad for the game. On MLB's side, there has to be a rule change because of this. A baseball game can't end in this fashion. It's horrible for the Marlins because they got up, they played this 3.5 hour game. They battled the entire time, and for it to end like that, it's just a bad look for the game. It's a bad look around the sports industry. People watching the game like, oh, how stupid that game ends like that. And then on Conforto's side, it's integrity of the game kind of aspect to it that you just lean into it. It's just a bad look all around for both the Mets, Conforto, and Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it was an interesting play. You mentioned it. He's definitely scuffling out of the gate here. During that Phillies series, he struggled a lot with runners on base. Has looked kind of lost at the plate, which is kind of surprising because he's a very, very good hitter. I don't know if you saw his comments after the game, Conforto's, but you could kind of tell with his tone and everything that he knew what he did, and I don't blame him for doing it. You find a way to win, but I do blame Major League Baseball for not getting that call right. You said it's not reviewable play, but if we're gonna have replay, you might as well be able to replay stuff like that because it was very blatantly obvious that he tucked his elbow out over the middle of the plate to get that call. It stinks for the Marlins because in this division, every game's going to matter. And you know what? That could have an effect in September on them if they have another good year. It's just an unfortunate play. I like if they were able to protest that game like they should have, and they have a good argument, but it was just a bad play. Terrible way for any game to end.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask before you mentioned it, did he have post-game remarks? So if he was smug about it, then I'm going to refrain from my devil's advocate that I was planning for this. But yeah, I would echo everything that you guys said. I don't blame him for doing it. I just I don't know. I want to pose one question. Like, what would need to be in place? My guess is it's robotic umps and like a robotic strike zone. But if you were to protest this, like the pitch was a little high and it was a slider, a right-handed slider coming into a lefty. Would it have been a strike? Yeah. Was it over the plate? Yes. But would it have been a strike as far as the letters are concerned? I don't know, but that's kind of what you have to go after.
It was a strike because the umpire started his strike 3 call. So obviously he thought it was a strike and he would have punched him out. And then I guess it calculated in his brain that he heard like a click from the elbow guard, and then he punched him out. So he made the call. I think that's the big problem that Mattingly's having, is that he's probably arguing, you made the call, stick with your call, and then review it. And then when it's reviewable because he called it a strike 3, and now that's something you can review on a hit by pitch, you'll clearly see that he leaned into it. Now you made the call, so it's unreviewable. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm just saying, if you want to have like a league-wide review of it and like have it be a rule, you can make it like a judgment call, kind of like you were just saying right there, where the home plate umpire has a chance to go back and do it again and basically say like, yeah, I was punching him out, like kind of like in the NFL, like how they do where the referee goes to the monitor. Or if you have a robotic strike zone, you can have it a universally defined length and width to the strike zone. You just go like, was that a strike? Yes. Did he lean in? All right, there you go. That's it. Like, I feel like there's 2 angles you can take to it.
I read the rule before we went on. If it's a strike, kind of like if you swing the bat and you get hit, it's still a strike. If it's ruled a strike by the umpire and you get hit, the strike supersedes the hit by pitch. Yeah. So if he would have just stayed with the strike 3 call, then the right call is made. And it's just a bad mess up by the umpire.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since he started to call the strike 3 and punch him out. Like that's a huge turn of events, because now it's 2 outs in the 9th, and the Marlins have a chance to extend that game and go into extras, and anything can happen from there. But the fact that he changed his call really is the issue.
Let's make this a more broad discussion about what an umpire is allowed to review and what he's not allowed to review. The point of replay is to get the call right. That went for the NFL. When baseball implemented it in 2014, around that time, that was the point, because there was a lot of controversy over why we have this technology and we're just letting these human umpires make mistakes without any accountability. So they put in replay, and they made tweaks to the replay regarding the neighborhood rule with force outs at second base. It just doesn't make sense to me why quote unquote judgment calls are not reviewable. If we have the technology and you're limiting teams the amount of times they can challenge a play, they should be able to challenge whatever they please. I don't understand why there's certain things that are a quote unquote judgment by the umpire that's not reviewable, and something that's just normal in-game, safe or out, fair or foul.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's just kind of the separation between generations, where it's like the old generation is like baseball has like a human aspect to it. Like it's got to have a human element. The umpires are part of the game. They're involved. And then there's the group of people, which I feel like is the majority at this point, who just want to get it right. And I don't know. I feel like that's the divide.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if we're going to have replay, you might as well be able to use it on whatever you think needs to be reviewed. I understand like NFL purposes, like they don't want to review penalties because you can technically say there's a penalty on every single play in football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Baseball is a little bit different, where it's a little more cut and dry. There's no such thing as a penalty, but like I don't understand why that shouldn't be a reviewable play, especially if it's going to be a spot like that, end of the game. Imagine a World Series ending like that. I mean, it's not likely, because it's just like it's a rare occurrence where that actually happens. But imagine Game 7 of a World Series ending like that, with a guy sticking his elbow out to walk it off on a hit by pitch like that. Like, that's just a terrible way for the game to end, whether you win or you lose. Like, it's just so anticlimactic.
Yeah.
There's no penalties per se. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we've seen perfect games and no hitters get broken up like that in the past.
Yeah. So. I think Scherzer had a similar situation in a perfect game. The pitch was a ball, like it was out of the zone, but there was a little bit of a lean in, or at the worst, a not a real attempt to get out of the way in that circumstance. But this is much worse because the pitch was a strike, according to the umpire who was about to punch him out. Scott mentioned penalties in the NFL. While there is no penalties per se in baseball, what this situation reminds me of is more in the NBA's kind of ballpark when it comes to replay. Scott, you watch the NBA much more closely than I do. I just peripherally watch it, and when the Knicks are good, I'll watch it. But I feel like the NBA has opened it up a little bit more on what you can review. I know for a fact that they've cracked down on a 3-point attempt. If the shooter swings his leg out to try to get that and one on the 3-pointer, that's something that can be reviewed and taken away and actually called a foul on the offensive player. That reminded me of a lot of this Conforto rule, or, potential Conforto rule that baseball could adopt. It's very similar because, in the NBA, you stick your foot out on a 3-point shot, you're going to try to get a 4-point play. That's not fair because you can't dictate where the defender is going to land. That's not fair. And here as well, pitch was clearly a strike. Who's to say that one day, someone can't even make it even more obvious and just put his hand out and try to catch the ball? Like, how does it end? I think if Manfred was smart, and we've been on the show and questioned that time and time again, this is something that should be changed immediately.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a great comparison, Glenn. I'm more a component of I don't feel like you have to get out of the way, but definitely if you're making the attempt to get hit, that's wrong. You shouldn't be able to do that. So I do agree. I think there should be something put into place saying this is wrong. You can't do that, and we should be able to go back and review it if it does happen. Because you know what, if Conforto continues to struggle again, he knows it's not going to get called. Or for any player, it's not really even just Conforto. Anybody can do this, and most likely it's not going to get called. So I do agree. I think there needs to be a plan put into action at this point to make this change.
Well, until that time, the Mets do walk off with the win today against the Marlins, division opponent. 18 more games between the two. So Tyler, I'm asking you this: how soon, if at all, will we see any retaliation on the Marlins' part?
I don't know if we're going to see retaliation necessarily. I feel like it's not the same as it's not really disrespectful in a way. It's just kind of oh, you're an idiot. I don't know. It's not insulting the Marlins, I don't think.
Would you do it? Would you throw at Conforto knowing he kind of leaned into
I wouldn't
it?
Throw at him.
Walk it off.
I feel like it's more embarrassing than insulting. I don't know. I don't really know how to put a finger on it.
I feel like it's one of those unwritten rules of the game. You try to get out of the way on a hit by pitch. You don't intentionally lean into it. That's a cop out. Scott, if that happens to the Phillies, are you asking Wheeler the next day to throw at Conforto?
Yeah, I might be a little more fired up going, especially if it was the Phillies. I don't know. I think it just spices up the next couple of games where the Marlins might, add some antics onto a big home run or just take an extra base. If there's a blowout, maybe not, take your foot off the pedal. I think it can spice up, the rest of their series and, the rest of the season for those other 18 games. I don't know if it calls for getting thrown at, but because that's something that we don't necessarily want in the game. But I certainly would not be against,
up and in.
That a little extra spice on a bat flip, a lot more excitement on something that big that happens.
It's like a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, I think the Marlins.
And the Marlins are going into the season with a chip on their shoulder because they made the playoffs and everyone's still taking them as the last place team. Yeah. So they feel like they have something to prove over 162. This might be an opportunity for them to be like, okay, we're here in a full season. We're not going to get bullied, and we're going to be part of this division that's going to be very good.
At the same time, though,
go ahead.
They did load the bases in a walk-off situation. You can't just point a finger at the Mets and be like, you stole the game from us. No, you gave them an opportunity to even be in that situation in the first place. So I'm not playing a sympathy card for the Marlins or where they're turning around oh, we're going to get you guys. I don't know. They might take offense to it, but I don't know.
The thing that's interesting about any potential retaliation is that the National League this year does not have the DH. So let's say bottom one, Conforto gets drilled on Saturday because there's an off day tomorrow. Then, the Marlins pitcher, don't know who it is off the top of my head. He's going to have to face 102 from DeGrom, and that's not something that you want to do.